As always, when we kick things off with the Ocala Arts and Entertainment Podcast, you see smiley faces, you know. We can't help it because it's a great vibes. And I am hanging out with the best in terms of Ocala cultural arts vibesy folks. Leslie is in the house, Nottingham, and of course we have Emily is in the house, Emily Parkman. We're talking about managing cultural arts, Leslie, and
Cultural Arts Coordinator.
Cultural Arts Coordinator, Leslie. Emily. Good. So, the vibe is right, so I started messing up too. So, because when you're messing up means the vibe is right, you see. Okay, so thank you very much for having me come do this and chat with you all about what's happening in Ocala for the culture. And we're going to start off with, so Emily, how are you getting involved in this wonderful organization? What's happening before you come to the cultural arts? Were you doing stuff like that before where you were born? Or you tell me, how did it start for you to want to be in cultural arts?
Well, my degrees are both in fine arts, so I already have an art background. And before I came to Ocala, I was living in Madison, Wisconsin.
Right.
And I was working as an installations assistant for the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art, as well as being a gallery assistant to Overture Galleries and a volunteer curator for Communication Madison, which is a community space that's multi-purpose for performing arts, visual arts, a shop to help support the visual arts, as well as promoting reading and free reading for the community.
So you were just jazzing up everything inside that little space you just
talked about? We did all kinds of stuff.
How did you get in? What inspired you to get into that kind of field, into the arts? I mean, as a kid coming up, I mean, did mom, dad, did anyone in your family was an artist or that did anything, music? How did that come about?
So I wouldn't say my parents are very artsy, but my mother absolutely loves doing anything arts related. So I grew up, going to the theater. I did ballet and outer dance, so I did a lot of performing as well. We would go to different museums, whether they were historical museums or art museums or art galleries. We would do a lot of cultural events that enriched my development.
So that's the foundation of,
yes.
Okay. You see, everyone I speak to, like yesterday I was interviewing LaToya, and it's only then she was like, oh yes, my mom used to line dance. I forgot that,
I know.
Something your parents did or thought might have pushed you in that direction. But so ballet. Mm-hmm. Is that the right position? That's wonderful. Okay, so you are coming into Ocala, and is it you coming in to start with the cultural arts immediately, or you at some point you kind of get into the cultural arts here?
Well, I applied for the position while I was still in Wisconsin. Because we knew we were moving down here.
Right.
So I wanted to, line up a position, and it seemed like a great opportunity to learn and to grow and become more involved with the Ocala community and maintain the arts background that I have.
Okay, so you applied and you nailed it.
I guess so.
She did. She's here.
Yeah. And she's here with her boss.
She's here,
So that's really, really, really wonderful. So Leslie, how did it happen for you? How did your journey kick off with? Was it always art or?
Pretty much. Very similar background. Parents were always putting me in ballet, art classes, theater. They did offer sports to me as a child, and I didn't like sweating. So was never something that you want me to run and sweat, that doesn't sound like that. That's not my jam.
Right.
So they were, my father was a doctor, my mom was an elementary school teacher, and while those positions don't necessarily overlap with the arts. I think there is some overlap with the arts. My mother's a very creative person, but she can't draw. But my dad,
Right.
who is a more technical person, he can.
Okay.
So she would describe something to him, and he would come in, especially to work in her classroom. Like when they were designing the bulletin boards, my dad would sketch out all my mom's ideas. So they really worked as a duo. So I grew up watching that, and our vacations as a child, we were never sit on the beach kind of people. Like our vacations were like heavy hitting. We're gonna go to this museum. We're gonna go to this event.
Right.
We're gonna go experience this, and that really fed a lot into my background. So from that position, I grew up, and they were kind of hoping I'd maybe go into the sciences. That was like a definite no. You can't just do the arts. You do need to do that balance. And I remember like in high school, like there was like I wanted to join the theater group, and there was like we had a lot of resistance to that, and I finally won them around.
Okay.
So it did take some work there. They originally were not. My dad specifically was not thrilled. He's like, no, you need to do, physics. And I was like, never gonna use physics, Dad, never. Sorry, it's just not me. But I think he's proud and really, really understands where I've gone with my life. So, again, it was. You're not really going to study theater when you get to college, are you? And I was like, no, I'm going to go into communications. That lasted about 2 weeks.
Right.
And I became a theater major. So theater's my undergrad, and then my graduate program was from the Smithsonian, where I studied history of decorative art.
Okay.
So historic fashion is actually my métier that I studied.
So historic fashion.
Historical fashion, yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
That's the whole story by itself,
Yes,
right?
yes,
there.
I have my thesis was on shoes.
Oh.
Yes, 20th century David Evans shoes. He was a shoe designer who worked primarily in New York and then in Italy.
Wow. It's interesting how stories can go in many directions, and when you hear what people was able to get involved with and experience, I mean it. So you are spearheading Ocala's cultural arts.
Yes.
Beautiful. I haven't seen any shoes yet, but I know we got.
There could be a sculpture coming.
Right.
Yeah, you know,
Right, there we go.
the shoes
There we go.
are the
And I'm not even
downtown
wearing
shoes.
really fun shoes today either. I'm wearing Sperry's, so just, But, there's a reason why I'm wearing Sperry's. I used to wear heels to this job. And the first month that I worked here, I was wearing my skirt, I was wearing my heels, and I get a call from across town where the artists who were working inside the Kroski Center had set off the alarm, and the police were called.
Oh.
And so I ran over there in my heels, and I don't know if you know about the Kroski layout. The open door is on the far side from the parking. So I was sprinting across the field in my heels, and it just rained, and it was a mess. But I didn't want my artist to get arrested, and from that day I was like, we're just going to wear flats. It's probably better. We're just wearing flats, just in case I have to run.
In mud.
Mud.
So I know you were at OMAC.
Yes,
before coming over to cultural arts.
Nope.
You were always cultural arts.
I moved down here from Kansas City for the position.
Oh, okay. Okay, beautiful. So how did that unfold? I mean, so you're down in there, and what kind of communication took place for you to move over?
Over here? Well, okay. My background is very helter-skelter.
Right.
So I've lived in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., New York City, and Kansas City with a brief stop in London. So then finding my way.
Guide,
Yeah.
At some point, world tour guide.
Just sort of finding my way. So in 2020, there was a job posting down here, and that was the middle of the pandemic, of course.
Right.
And I was working in Kansas City because that's where my entire family is based. I've got nieces and nephews, and my brother, my sister, my parents, everybody's there. And I had moved there from working at Christie's in New York City to go home to be part of their lives and really kind of, get to, because they were little and they didn't know me, and I wanted to really invest in that time that's so precious when they're young. But I moved home in 2016, and there aren't that many arts jobs in Kansas City. It's a very limited pool, and rightfully so. They try to work with people who went to school there, and so it's very insular.
Right.
So I ended up working for Hallmark Corporate, which is based in Kansas City. I worked for a library for a little while, and then I also ended up at Hillwood. Woo!
Yeah.
Woo! Hillwood was another stop on the trip. Mahaffey Stagecoach Stop and Farm, which is a historic farm, 1860s. Oh. I wore the sunbonnet, the corset, the hoop skirt, the whole 9 yards, and did everything from tour groups to cataloging different pieces in the collection to mucking up pig pens. You never knew what you were going to get.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun. But the pandemic hit and those jobs disappeared.
Right.
Because I was at Hallmark at that time as a contract employee, and then the museum was entirely, based on need. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have kids coming through, there's not a lot of need.
Of course.
And having lived through a previous section of time, the 2008 financial crisis, I saw a lot of museums that had about 2 years before that funding dried up and positions went away. So I was looking at the writing on the wall, wanted a full-time position, and knew I had to look outside of Kansas City if I was going to continue to have a career and get health insurance and all of that kind of fun stuff. So I cast a wider net, and it just so happened there was a cultural arts position down here. What was that position called? Cultural arts supervisor. That was my original spot here with the city. I flew down in the middle of the pandemic.
Wow.
That was a trip. Rented a car, drove up, interviewed, really loved the team. I loved the city. I saw a lot of parallels with my hometown as far as where things were and how things were developing. And so interviewed, and shortly after the interview I got a call right away saying, "We'd love you to come on board." And I was like, "Oh, this is amazing, this is great." I'm looking at apartments right now, this is fantastic. And I said yes on the spot. So I moved down in the middle of the pandemic and rented an apartment and didn't really meet anybody for about a year. So it was definitely a very interesting sort of adjustment. And so the joke is sometimes when I'm driving around Ocala, I still get lost. Because I spent the first year in an apartment and we worked from home for a section of that. And so I didn't, I know where the art is around town.
Yes.
But when somebody's like, "Oh, go over to Lee's on the corner," I'm like,
Avenue, this, that.
I don't know where that is.
And you've made your way now into being the manager from supervision,
Yep.
to, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. We're a very small, very, very small currently, but mighty team. We're a team of officially 3,
right,
with an admin that sort of oversees us in growth management. So we've got an admin component. She was originally with us. We've recently had a reshuffle. We were with Recreation and Parks. They moved us over to growth. They want us to be more project-based, which I think opens up a lot of really great opportunities in working with the CRAs and different groups in the community that we don't always have a lot to do with, but we're starting to, which is fantastic.
And the beautiful thing I love about what the Cultural Arts was able to achieve is your events. Those the staple events that you do, like the first Friday, that's coming up.
Yes.
And I think I'm saying it's coming up because I just filled out a form.
You did.
You know, when I came in, this, you know, oh, Sean, here you go. 2. Okay, just fill this out,
Yes,
please.
yeah.
Right, Emily?
Yes.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yeah. So I love that first Friday art walk. Whose idea was that? Do you know, is it something that just started on its own, or how did that come about?
A lot of our events and our projects that we do in the city were started by Melissa Townsend.
Okay,
You know
okay,
who Melissa is. She's now a realtor in the community,
okay.
and she's a fantastic resource. I think she was the one who initially
Built it.
started. I know she's definitely responsible for the Ocala Outdoor Sculpture Competition.
Okay, right. Yes.
And I think she also had a hand in First Friday Art Walk.
She did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes for like how many months?
9.
It starts in September, right?
Yep. September 1st
September
is the
1st.
first one this year, and then it goes to the following May. So there are 9
Okay,
First Friday
okay.
art walks.
So every first Friday of, like, from beginning September,
Mhm.
folks can come downtown and experience what the artists have to say and show.
Yep.
Okay, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And besides artists having different locations, how do you go about pairing like an artist with, in terms of positioning? How do you position artists? And because some people might say, well, I would like to be here closer to the downtown square instead of being on this street over here. How does that side of it work out? Is it the artists, they have to find a location on their own, or you designate where they go?
Well, the city definitely designates where
Okay.
each artist go, because we
Right.
wouldn't want any conflicts day of setting up. We don't want any uncertainties.
Yes.
And then we also submit all of our layouts to permitting in
Okay.
recreation and parks. So anyone that has like special events will always have to complete this permit to make sure that we have the resources available to, you know, make sure the event is smooth. And if any setup needs to happen, recreation and parks is able to take care of that.
Okay.
So this year we began a location lock optional fee that artists
Okay.
can pay.
Right.
And then they rank their preference of location, first, second, and third, of where they would like to be located.
Ah,
We then receive the payment and these preferences, and first come, first serve. So if you're the first person that wants the location, you'll get your first preference. If you wait, then the options get smaller and smaller.
so that's introduced for this year's. This
Yeah, so
coming-
it's a new way to try to prevent conflicts of locations, to, you know, make sure some artists don't like being moved around, so they'll have a
Yes.
certainty of this is always going to be my spot when I set up.
Mhm.
Some artists don't mind, you know, being
Yeah.
moved around because they enjoy interacting with different businesses or other artists that are located near them.
Right. That's beautiful. And you also have like musical performances that is taking place as well.
Yes. Yes, you'll, I believe you'll be one of our.
Yeah.
Ah,
Performing artists.
Actually, yes. I did
think
fill out
might
that
have been
form. Yeah, that's beautiful. So the First Friday Art Walk is one of your staple events. And I know you have the big Levy Amp music series that takes place for the community to experience all these wonderful artists coming in. I know the, so First Friday goes up until May, which would be May 2024.
Yes.
And Levy Amp